Yes, Madam Mayor.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to call the Board of Supervisors meeting to order. May I have a roll call?
Supervisor Giomi.
Here.
Supervisor White. Supervisor Jones. Supervisor Schutte.
Here.
Mayor Bagwell.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you so much. Oh, yes, we do. We're going to move on to our invocation. Pastor Louis is here. Can you please lead us?
Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day. We pray for the people of our community. We pray for the sheriffs and fire. Keep them safe as they serve the people of our community. Pray for the Board of Supervisors and their families. Grant them wisdom in all the decisions that are made. We give you thanks and praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Stephanie, would you do the honor of leading us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Okay. We're going to move on to agenda item 5, which is our public comment period. Do I have anyone on the phone?
There are no callers on the line at this time.
Thank you so much. To my knowledge, I didn't have anyone in the audience that had signed up for public comment, but just a quick look. Anyone, just in case? Okay, great. Then we're going to move on to agenda item number 6. We have the approval of the minutes of October 7th, 2021. I haven't received any corrections, but with that, a motion?
I move to approve the meeting minutes of October 7, 2021 as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. We're now going to move on to agenda item number 7, which is our special presentations. The first one we're going to work on is a proclamation to recognize Flood Awareness Week. It's only a week instead of a month. I had to look at that twice, right? All right, come on up, and I will see. Put a mask on and I'll try to speak loudly. Whereas Carson City recognizes the significant threat flooding poses to the residents, the city, and our local economy. And whereas Carson City is at particular risk of flooding, mostly from rain causing rapid melting of snow. And whereas during Nevada Flood Awareness Week, local, state, and federal agencies across the state are working together to inform the public about the dangers of flooding, how to protect their homes and families from a flood, and plan for recovery. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, Nevada, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim November 14th through the 20th as Flood Awareness Week, and supports increased public awareness of flood threats and encourages all Carson City residents to act and be prepared for flood events. So, Rob, do you have a few words of wisdom for the community?
I do. What I tried to do is I tried to get the word out, and I know we have this wonderful brochure that not only talks about flood, but talks about earthquake and fire. Has a number of checklists on it and phone numbers and evacuation plans. So it's a really comprehensive document. It's for Carson City, and we really try to get the word out, and we'll do so this time every year, and hope that everybody does their part and thinks about flood and how to be prepared.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We definitely want our community to be safe, and I like to just give a shout out to the team at Public Works. They take their role for the safety of our community very seriously, and they're doing all they can to make good decisions to help us stay safe. So thank you so very much. Did we want to? Anybody need a quick picture? Or yes, please. Yeah, we would like one. Thank you, sir. Okay. There you go. Thank you so much. It's important. Okay, to share with others. That's perfect. All right, would you do me a favor? Give me that one. We'll move on to our next presentation since I'm already down here. Yeah, all right, Smarties. Yep, I don't have long arms either. Okay, the next presentation that we would like to work on, if I can have all of the people from our Parks, Rec, and Open Space committees. I can see from the committee members, the staff, the community. This really, to me, is, I don't know, a crowning glory of Carson City because the residents selected it. It's not just something that came from staff. It came from the people in Carson City 25 years ago, recognizing, what we wanted in our community and what was important in our community, and to be able to vote for a tax increase to keep your open spaces and parks healthy, and to just know that that's what makes a community. Come on up, Mark. I see him. Perfect timing. Look at this. I mean, I don't know. It's still amazing to me that more people voted yes to tax themselves, than no, that people say you can't get a tax increase. But you can if the public understands what it's going to be for and that they support it. And I think we have 25 years of excellent use of the funds. And I hope that the community that voted for that recognizes it and says we've been good stewards of the money, right? I think we've been excellent stewards. So let's have a proclamation for the quality of life, November 2021. Whereas parks, trails, and open space are an integral part of Carson City and the quality of life in the community. And whereas in 1996, a passionate and dedicated group of residents known as the Quality of Life Citizens Committee, with the supports of the Park and Recreation Director, Steve Castens, and the Board of Supervisors, recommended that Nevada state law be amended to authorize new sales and use tax of 0.25% to be used to fund the acquisition, development, and maintenance of parks, open space, trails, recreation facilities, the Boys and Girls Club. Katie, come on up. It's all a part of this. And whereas on November 5th, 1996, the Carson City voters overwhelmingly approved of ballot question number 18, the Carson City Quality of Life Initiative. Whereas the Quality of Life Initiative enabled the capital city to develop a park system that has more per capita than the national average, right? Woohoo! It's important. Consisting of over 8,000 acres of parks, trails, and open space. And whereas the Quality of Life Initiative has generated more than $55 million in revenue since its inception and leveraged nearly $12 million more in grants, because we could use that money. Hi, Donna. Come on in, you guys. You can even come over here a little bit. Whereas the Quality of Life Initiative funded important projects such as the Robert Bob Kroll Multi-Purpose Athletic Center, the Rifle and Pistol Range, projects at Mills Park, Fuji, and Centennial. Whereas the Quality of Life Initiative benefits wildlife and future generations through the preservation of thousands of acres of open space and the construction of 90 miles of public trails. Whereas November 2021 commemorates the 25th anniversary of the Quality of Life Initiative. Whereas the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Department and the Board of Supervisors invites the community to celebrate this initiative through the month of November with a variety of free programs and activities. We're just going to celebrate all month long, and we hope you and the whole entire community do it. And I know one of my favorite things coming up is, it's the second one we're doing is like a Christmas night at Silver Saddle Ranch. Is that Homestead Holidays? Bring your families. Just come and celebrate with all of us. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, Nevada, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim November 2021 as Quality of Life Month in Carson City, and I urge all residents to spend their time in their favorite park or enjoy this beautiful region we all call home. You might even want to try a different park. Go ahead and see if there's one. I took a staff person doing something the other day, and I took her by 3 parks that she never knew even existed here. So maybe even try and just forage out there a little bit and see if you can find something new, because we really have a great park system. But thank you all so very much. And then do you have? Words that you want to share with everyone?
I do want to acknowledge a couple of people. We have Steve Castens here today, and he was the Parks and Recreation Director when the Quality to Life initiative was passed, and it's such a great accomplishment. And we appreciate all of Steve's efforts and the Citizens Committee for what they did, because we wouldn't be able to reinvest in our park system today without all their hard work. And Katie Leo from the Boys and Girls Club. The Boys and Girls Club has received almost $1.4 million from this fund. And it's really tremendous what we've been able to accomplish. And if you don't mind, we do have a video after we take a picture to show everybody as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. Let's get a picture. Do you guys want to come on down? This is a big deal. You guys are going to have to come a little bit in the room because
Stay up here.
we're just not, yeah, you guys could stand right behind if you want, the board members. Yeah. Are we in? Oh, there you go. Hi, Alan. This is just so
Just lay out in
wonderful.
front here, Alan.
Are we in?
I don't. That's pretty big. Look at Stephanie. Okay. Short people. Smile. We're like this. Are we looking at her?
Faith? She's the paper.
Look at
So
Stephanie
we want a
first.
good one for Stephanie or for the newspaper? I don't know. I vote the paper.
Okay. Hi, Miss-
Oh, Faith will go over there too. Thank you, Faith.
Yeah, no, I feel weird. I feel like my back.
Perfect. All right. So I look forward to the video. This is so.
That was what we had in the parade.
Don't even get me started. All right, let's cue up the video.
Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. One other thing I wanted to just acknowledge, our park ranger, Tyler Curver, made this amazing poster for celebrating Quality of Life Month, and I'll put it in the back for everyone to see. And then we also have stickers for everybody as well that he designed. So I just wanted to point that out. And we had this in the parade, which was great.
Super talented.
November 2021 marks the 25th anniversary of the passage of the Quality of Life Initiative, or Question 18. Question 18 was passed by the voters of Carson City in 1996 and led to the increase of sales tax by 1/4%. Using these funds, we've been able to generate almost $55 million and leverage almost $12 million in grants that help support parks, trails, and open space. We have almost 8,000 acres of parks and open space in Carson City and nearly 90 miles of trails, all of which make this a wonderful community to live, work, and play. Carson City.
Thank you, Carson City, for 25 years of support for our parks, trails, and open space.
Well, that was well done.
That's awesome.
Mhm. Well done. Supervisor White, you have a comment?
I'd just like to say that, I recognize that Carson City Parks and Open Space really is a world-class operation. People visit our parks, from all around the country, especially our trails. That really has put one of the pieces of the puzzle together for Carson City. And I'd like to thank all of you for the hard work you've done, even so long ago when I sat on the Youth Sports Association with Steve. How long ago was that? Um, so thank you guys for that. Let's keep doing it. Let's take care of what we have. Thank you.
Does anyone? I don't see any other comments. So again, tremendous job. I'm just so proud of the staff and the community. It took both to get this done. So well done, and well done on the video. Okay. Okay, we're going to move on to our consent agenda. Does any member need anything pulled? Not to my knowledge. Supervisor Giomi, you have a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of item 8A, 9A, 10A, which has a resolution 2021-R34, all as presented.
I have a motion, and do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to, excuse me, everybody out? Okay, agenda item 12A, which is discussion and possible action regarding the authorizations to submit some BLM SNPLA grants, and let's do some more for what we've been talking about today. Does any member of the board have a question? Seeing no questions, I can even take a motion, and let's just do some great work here. We need more than the 55 million that we've had over the last few years, and 12 million. Let's get some more. Supervisor White, did you want to make a motion?
I move to authorize submission of the grant nomination as presented and to authorize the director to sign all necessary documents.
Second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Can't wait to see what's next. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item number 13A, which is discussion and action regarding the submission of 3 grant applications for Division of Emergency Management for stormwater activities. Does any Supervisor Giomi, you have a question?
No, just a comment. I just wanted to point out that this application is possible because of work that this board and the city has done prior to that by developing a hazard mitigation plan. And by having that in place, it allows us to apply to grants like this. And studies funded through the Carson Water Subconservancy District and through FEMA help us know where to go. So this is just, I just want to point out the culmination of that work that goes on behind the scenes.
Yes.
And it culminates in this kind of opportunity for us to see grant funding to mitigate those hazards. So I just wanted to point that out and sort of tie the loop together.
Absolutely. Supervisor White?
Yeah, and to follow up on that, what really made this possible as well is the forward thinking within the Public Works Department, having a 20-year capital improvement plan, while we only approve the next few years as identified as priorities. These projects were able to come forward because the current CIP list was not eligible for this money, and we were able to bring these projects forward because they were already set up on the tee and basically ready to go. So thank you guys for your hard work, and express to Mr. Schultz, I appreciated his phone call, the pretty long conversation we had about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Seeing no other questions, motion Supervisor Giomi.
I move to authorize the chief stormwater engineer to sign and submit the grant application.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you so much. And again, it's going to be interesting to see. We were doing a flood week, quality of life, and now we're submitting grants that really fall together right with our missions and purposes. So again, thanks for a great job. Well done. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 13B, which is discussion and possible action regarding an update on our affordable workforce housing project at 3410 Buckeye Way. Mr. Stuckey, are you going to start us off to take us through this project?
Yes, Mayor, I will.
Thank you.
So Dan Stuckey, Deputy Public Works Director for the record. I want to introduce the Palaseek team and the rest of the development partners here. I've got Michael Snodgrass to my right. He's with Oikos Development Corporation. Mike Schneider, who you have met and seen before with Palaseek. And then at the end is Hillary Lopez with Praxis Consulting Group. So these are the three kind of key members of the team that we've been working hard at over the last 6 months or so, well, really a year and a half to develop this project. Last time we were in front of the board was for the exclusivity agreement. If you remember that was back on April 15th, and that allowed the team to pursue federal tax credits and home funds, which they have been successful at, which is great news. We've been hard at work as well, drafting a development agreement, which is the purpose of this item in front of you today. I know certain members of the board, Supervisor Giomi, I know mentioned last time stressing the importance of the board, and I know other members of the board expressed the same thoughts, but the importance of being able to adequately have the time to review this agreement and make sure that the feedback that they provide is meaningful and can be addressed. So I want to tell you, I want to give the team here a chance to talk about the progression of the project, but I do want to tell you this is the first of 3 times that you will see this development agreement. We will be coming back for first and second reading after this meeting, so you will have ample time to provide meaningful comments. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the development team. They have some slides here that I will pull up. Is that where you guys want to start? There.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Mayor and Supervisors. It's changed in here since we were up here for the RFP. And so if you want to know what we've been doing the last 18 months, it's kind of what you've been doing, dodging COVID and redoing our thought process on development. And I'd like to acknowledge, excuse me, I get the wind and everything is kicking my asthma up. You're naming after my good friend, Bob Kroll, who was a good friend for 30 years. So anyhow, to continue on with that, when we were awarded the RFP, we went home and it was the holiday season after December 5th. And we were enjoying the holiday season, getting our thoughts together. And the middle of January, we selected our architect, which is Cathexis out of Reno. And Don is a good friend of mine for 3 decades also, and he and my wife actually served on some state boards together for the arts and that. So, and Don has done an excellent job, and then all of a sudden, we started design and March hit, and the world shut down. So anyhow, we pulled back as we had to do, and we watched as the big fire hit Oregon and the largest lumber mill on the West Coast went down, and we saw the price of lumber escalate, and it was about $10,000 a unit for our units was what that escalated at the time. It's come back down now, and we've watched tax cuts, the Trump tax cuts, and you think, well, tax cuts are good, except when you're in this business, because now there isn't enough money that the federal government can spread out for housing across the nation, for affordable housing. And the big key is the people that make a lot of money, that big corporations and individuals that buy tax credits, they're not in that market anymore, so the value of the bonds falls, and that really affects us. And I can tell you that I was doing a project in 2008-9 where we got hit with the big downturn, and our tax credits it was just awful what happened. We were out at 62 cents on that, which just devastated us. And our project was on hold until, they designated Nevada a difficult to develop area, and we got $3 million more in TCAP money, which allowed us to continue on. Well, we're not going to get that during this, so we have to be very diligent. We've been watching everything. Unfortunately, we have Hillary Lopez here, who is an expert at all this, and I'm sure some of you know her since she worked in Carson City for a long time. But we've, at the end of last year, we said, okay, we got to go. So we put the development team together and said, let's go. And then in February, the vaccine came out, and everything started going smoothly. Well, not smoothly, but more smoothly. And here we are, and we've designed what we think is a great project. And we have one of Don's assistants here this morning from Cathexis to answer any questions. And as I told you, on December 5th, 2019, we will bring a nonprofit in with us on this. And Michael Snodgrass represents the nonprofit arm of it, and he's also a contractor, so we can help keep the cost down more. So I'd like to turn it over to Michael so he can explain to you where we're going.
Thank you, and thank you for having us here this morning. I'm just going to give you a brief design kind of update on where we are and what we've gone through since we came on board. So, my name again is Michael Snodgrass. I'm the president and CEO of Oikos Development Corporation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. I've been leading affordable housing for about 30 years now. And we are, because we go where the need is. So it seems like right now the need is everywhere. And that's how we got to Carson City when we got a call from Mike and his group. So, in February, we started the master plan review process in earnest on the site and designing the site in order to get to the part where we could submit for the low-income housing tax credits. We put in for 2 9% awards, hoping we would get one, because really there's a $700,000 limit for this county in particular, and then we'd have to go in the general pool. The maximum a developer can get is $1.25 million. So you'll see on some of the numbers why we have what we call show 16 unrestricted. Doesn't mean they're unrestricted in terms of rents. It just means it's unrestricted. They're not tax credits units. The rents are still low, actually below 60% area median income, but they're not counted as part of that tax credit calculation. Thankfully, we were awarded both the $700,000, then the $550,000, along with some home funds, National Housing Trust funds. The National Housing Trust funds have to go for people below 30% median income, so extremely low income. And then, so that will do 80 units. So as you look at the map, I don't know if you can see the map, and I'm assuming you have screens, but on the, I guess what it should be, it's on my left, on the west side. Those are the 40 family and the 40 senior are the 2 9% awards that were awarded. So we were planning on being before now. In fact, we were planning on being here, I think, in early October or late September. However, something interesting happened in September where they dropped what's called a QCT line. You'll see a red line kind of going across that, which means the area above that QCT is in an area that gets a boost of tax credits.
The
30%.
census tract
It's a
was updated.
qualified
right.
census tract, yeah.
Right.
And so the census tract was updated for 2022, which means that all of a sudden that became a viable, very viable option to do all the 160 at once. I actually met with Marsha Fudge in DC in her office in September to try and get the entire site in the QCT, so we would not have to sit there and play this theatrics of pushing some above the line and some below the line, and they were willing to do it. However, they really said it's an IRS Treasury issue. I talked to IRS Treasury, and they said, we don't have any control over the QCT. We take an act of Congress. So we said, okay. All right, well, but the IRS and Treasury said, just push your units above the line. So we worked on that. We worked with the Nevada Housing Division to try to make that work. They had some deadlines as well that said, well, because we were trying to push as many units to the north of the line as we could to get all that boost as we could, to do them all again at once, keep the rents as low as possible. But the division at the end of the day said too many changes, you'd have to probably reapply for your 9%. And I'm of the feeling you never reapply for funds you've already been awarded. So we'll make the 90 or the 80 units family senior awards work right now, and then do the other 80 units of family units, not in the future, but in the very near future. So the plan is to actually put in for bonds either in March or May. But the one thing we have to wait for, we need some home funds to put into those other 80 units in order to get the property tax exemption. That's a requirement. And so, but that application is not until May of 2022. So we would have the 80 units of the 9% under construction in March. My architect doesn't like that, but I say March. And then the other 80 units, we could have those under construction shortly thereafter. I'm hoping for an August type time frame. If they're announced in May, they'd have to go through end of May or probably a June or early July award, and then you still have some paperwork you have to do with HUD. We're doing trying to get the environmental review done on the entire site now, so we don't have to wait. That's always a big concern, is that HUD environmental review. So we would have that completed and ready to go. So when those home funds come out, we feel very confident we'll get that. Some funds from home to accomplish what we need to accomplish. And we have the other gap financing identified then for the other 80. So while it shows a phase 1 and phase 2, it's really almost like a phase 1A, because they'll all be under construction at the same time and completed within a month or two probably of each other. Because once you start the framing, you can really go building to building and frame it all up. So it's really getting to that construction start. That's probably.
And what Michael is indicating, we don't want to lose a sub on the site. So we want to keep it rolling, and that's
right
the goal.
So that's kind of where we are at this stage. We look forward to working with you on this project. I think we're very excited to get started. Hillary is here to answer any of the you thought I was technical, but she's got even the more technical stuff that she can talk about in terms of the incomes, who we're targeted. Because as part of the tax credit application, you have to target a very low income primarily as the 9%. So we have, I think our average was what, at 42% AMIs, 41%? 40.
Sorry, for the record, Hillary Lopez with Praxis Consulting Group. Yes, so the average weighted income across the 80 units is about 40% of AMI.
So Hillary, I think maybe you have some slides that you can show to us. I think it's important for the public and maybe some of the members of the board that were not serving when we were looking at the why. So I think it's important that everyone understand the reason that we're doing this project, why the city is giving property into the project. It was to meet a need for people to have housing at an affordable rate. And so thank you so much. Maybe we could walk a little bit through this, because I think it will help just everyone on this board and the general public understand who the audience is, who the market of these housing units, who are we trying to help? Where are their income levels? And so we kind of wanted to pretend like this project was in place. I think that was important for me, is to say, pretend that these 80 units were online now, today. What did the last 3 years look like? So who in the community is eligible if the scenario were in place? And so if you could maybe just walk us through a little bit so that the general public understands what is the income of a senior. Again, obviously it's on old numbers. Every year the HUD number changes, but I think this is representative for everyone to understand who in the community we're helping and why we're even doing the project. So if you could do that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. And so you could see on the slide that we've broken it into the two phases of this phase, which is the 40 units of senior housing as well as the 40 units of family housing. And each property contains a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units, with rents targeted as low as 30% of area median income on both properties, and then income targeting at 50% of area median income and below for all of the units on the senior property, and then for the majority of units on the family property. There are 16 non-LIHTC restricted units on the family property as well, whereas Michael had noted the rents on those units will be closer to the 60% of area median income. This allows us to serve a wide segment of the population, from those basically with the lowest of incomes all the way up to 60% of area median income, which again, includes a component of workforce housing as well for those in our community that need it. And these rents are at a significant advantage to market. And so even the fair market rents in the Carson area for like a 1-bedroom are about $800, and for a 2-bedroom over $1,000. And so you could see that the 2021 rents, even though there's been a slight increase over the past few years, that the rents that we're proposing at the 30 to 50% rent targets have a significant advantage to a market rent right now.
Could you just please give us an actual example of, I have a senior citizen in Carson City that might be interested in a 1-bedroom. Can you walk through one line? Because
Sure.
I'm just trying to get this out of legalese speak.
Yep.
Right? Let's move it to a general common
Yes.
public person. They don't know what an AMI is. They don't know any
Sure.
of those kind of things. So if you can talk about in 2021, if you were the income of such,
Yep.
if you could help boil that
Sure.
down, I think it'll help our
Um,
public understand what we're trying to accomplish here.
Perfect. So, for example, just kind of building on what Mayor Bagwell has said, if I'm a lower income senior in Carson City, and by senior, it's age 55 and above. So I'm getting closer to there. So, but if you were a single person, a single senior in Carson City that had a fixed income, for example, you may be making about $29,625,000 a year if you're at or below 50% of Carson City's median area income for a single person household. So you could see that if you were to spend about 30% of your income per year on housing, you're talking about 369,000 divided by 12 months. Sorry, I need to do that math.
That's all right. Better to be accurate than
It's about $750 a month, and the rents that we're looking at are about $444 a month.
Right.
So, it gives you some significant savings, which allows then these households to have additional disposable income for other needs like medicine, food, socialization, and activities. So, and again, some of that advantage decreases as we get higher in the rent. But even at those fair market rents, then while we're approaching that, there is still some advantage to being in this property over in the open market.
Well, and that, to really drive home the point is, I think everyone that currently lives in Carson City recognizes there is no single family, one bedroom for $444 a month. We know that does not exist. So we are going to be providing an opportunity for those that are on fixed incomes and the working poor to really be able to have a home of their own, to be able to have an apartment and to pay a little, to still have all that self-worth and all those good things, but that it's something that is affordable. So I think that the public will recognize there's no single family household in 2021 being able to rent for $444. That's the point I'm actually trying to drive out there right now. It's not an exact science. As I said, this number will change every year, but I think this affordability chart really paints the picture of what we're trying to accomplish. Supervisor Schutte, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for what you're doing with this. I just think it's incredibly important that housing, that there's an opportunity for people to have a roof over their head. And the working poor, this is just so critical, so thank you. My question was on the non-restricted, and you addressed that. So that is then up to 60% of the AMI. So non-restricted, it isn't that it truly is anybody, but it falls within the guidelines of 60%? Or is it anybody? And if so, can you explain the purpose behind that? Thank you.
Sure. So again, for the record, Hillary Lopez. So those 16 non-restricted units are not included under the low-income housing tax credit declaration. That will be the restrictive covenants that will be placed on this property once the project places in service. So technically, those units kind of fall outside of income restrictions. However, the developer has identified that while they're non-restricted under that declaration, that we would limit those rents to the highest rent of either fair market rent or that 60% AMI rent, since they tend to trend together.
Michael Snodgrass again. And part of the reason is, of course, we have hard construction costs that we have to cover. And so we have to get the rents obviously being so low in relation to what the market would bear. Because construction costs aren't any different between market and low income. And so you have to be able to support some permanent debt. And so those unrestricted rents, we put them where we thought they needed to go, and we still would like them to be as low as possible. But, it has to be there to support the permanent debt.
Well, that makes sense. So thank you very much for the clarification.
So I'd like to just follow up a little bit because, again, we're working on the development agreement. So the 16 unrestricted units are not being restricted. They are what will let you annually fill any gap financing or issues. So just so that we're clear on the record, you will strive to keep those rents to the minimum, but to me, that's where the actual viability of the long-term project actually resides. So if you have to go to market on 16 of the units because that lets the remainder of the 80 succeed, and I'm not opposed to having 16 market rent. I want the project to succeed. It's far more important. And if there's 16 units that people will pay market rent to have, that then keeps the remainder active and the debt done, and, I'm okay. So I just want to be clear, there's nowhere in the development agreement, those 16 units are outside of any of the HUD rules. You know, you're not subject to the rules. So I need us all to make sure we're on the same page and realizing that those 16 units really is your flexibility because it's not restricted by a financing term attached to it that
And-
says you will do such and such.
So that is correct. So
right.
those units are not covered by any restrictions or declarations. And so as we go through underwriting or as other things on the project change, those are the rents that are offsetting the deep targeting on the other units. And so those rents may have to adjust.
Well,
But
thank you, and I just appreciate the why. And so thank you, because that's an excellent reason. So
That you
appreciate
just
it.
have to have a little bit of,
Absolutely.
got to have some rooms. Again, project success, I think, is the ultimate goal for all of us. Supervisor Giomi, you had some question?
And those are rotating units. You're not going to designate 16. It'll rotate, right, at any given time basis. So if someone goes out, you can't go to 17, but
Right.
those 16 will rotate within the complex.
again, Hillary Lopez for the record, and that is correct. So the units will be floating. So as tenants rotate or move out and we have new move-ins at the property, as long as we stay in compliance with the regulations, the actual unit itself may change.
Can you talk a little bit about, this was sort of what came to mind as I read the hundreds of pages of documents. Who and how will and I realize it's down the road, but isn't that far down the road? How will the selection process go for qualifying people to get into these residences on the low income side? Can someone talk to that?
So again, Michael Snodgrass, Oikos. We have selected a property manager who happens to be here in attendance today and can answer a lot of the property management questions. But that is something the property manager, that's what they get paid to do, right? As to work on that selection, of course, under the guidelines that are required by both the state housing division, HUD, and all the rules and regulations that go along with it. So these are professional property managers that will do that selection. I anticipate we will have a waiting list for us
I'm
at
positive.
start of construction.
Yeah.
And
Positive.
some projects, I get phone calls on my cell phone asking when these are going to be built. So those 16 unrestricted units, I expect those are going to be pretty hot commodity. I think they all will be very well received. I mean, because and like we talked about, the reason for this flexibility, and you mentioned it too, with the floating part is every unit is going to be built the same with the same quality. So you're not going to be able to tell, well, that's your 30% AMI unit, that's your other unit.
Right.
They're all
I think that's actually
the quality.
critical. I mean, that's actually critical in my mind because, just because we're building housing for affordable or housing for people in the lower end of the income scale doesn't mean that they should enjoy less comfort
Quality.
than everyone else. And so I really do appreciate the necessity for those 16 units and the fact that they're floating because it integrates, it makes it an integrated housing complex. And I think that's really critical. So I do appreciate that component of it.
Right, and we would actually then have basically a unit for everyone, you know what I mean, in terms of
Correct.
income.
Right.
So it's not like this is just 30% AMI or just market rate. It's
Right.
Right.
all citizens should have the opportunity.
Well, I would just, I mean, I know there's a lot still to suss out and vet, and I don't want this board to overlook the significance of this first, or maybe second step we're taking. Because we've needed affordable housing in this community, like a lot of communities, as you mentioned. And there isn't a whole lot, in my mind, a local government can do to affect affordable housing. And so I think in 20 years, we'll look back on this much in the same way we did with the Quality of Life Initiative as a landmark decision. So I appreciate everyone's efforts to get us to this point and the hard work that got us here. I know we have some more work to do, but it's very much appreciated.
Supervisor White?
Thank you. I've been informed that Omar FFA is no longer a part of this group. However, if you look on pages 542, 543, 562, 63, 64, and 65, Omar is listed there as an owner and is apparently still a player in this operation. Can we have some clarification on that?
Yes, Omar had some issues that we had to take care of. And, I personally bought him out of the project a couple months back. And we split amicably, and he agreed to the buyout. And I think that's a cleanup issue there
Right.
that we'll do. That's all. But Omar's totally out of Palisade,
Okay. Has anybody on city staff been to any of these facilities that this group is operating to see if they're truly quality run projects?
I'm not staff, but just me. I will, for the record, indicate that I had previously worked on projects when I was on the Fish Board of Directors, and we were integral in working with Praxis and things to be able to put together the lovely project in Carson City called Richards Crossing. Quality, quality, quality. I visit that once a month to continue to look at the operating group, the property manager group, and I've got to tell you, I think it's another one of those projects, like Stacy says, that you can look back and say, you know what, that was a landmark decision. We did the right thing, and that project, again, we've got top notch with Hillary here and the management companies that did a phenomenal job looking through all of the applicants to put into the facility, and it's another proud one. And if this one can operate, and everything that I'm reading and working on that just reminds me of 5 years ago doing all of this, it seems like a repeat to me, but Carson City's going to have another quality project to be proud of. Is everything a perfect world? Can you get a management company or somebody that turns out not to be as productive as you'd like? Yeah. Do you have to sometimes make changes? Yes. But not taking the move, to me, would be a wrong answer. So,
I just wanted to make sure we
Oh,
were
that we have a good-
involved with a quality.
yeah, they've been,
quality
he's
group.
been doing it for 30 years, more of his projects in Las Vegas area.
Correct, yeah.
But nothing but good news that I'm aware
And
of.
to allow Mr. White to have some comfort, we're in this project, as you see, for the first 49 years, and then we renew. This is not a project you build, fill up, and in 3 years you flip it, because there's nobody to flip these projects to, really. So it's a project we're in, and to maintain our rents, we have to maintain the projects. All right, so these are not get-rich-quick schemes. Here, we're in this for the long haul, and we're going to be your partner in this for the long haul. And we're not going away. And to let you know, during last March, I take our partnership really seriously. So last March, when the world was collapsing, I called my insurance agent, Steve Gwynn, who happens to be former Governor Kenny Gwynn's son, and asked him, can we get insurance to cover us on COVID if we have any of our workers on the site get COVID and get really sick or die or anything, can we get insurance? And because, how do you distance 6 feet on some of these construction sites? And he called me back next day and he said, no, we're not going to write anything. So I called John Henley, who happens to be the son of a friend of mine, and he was president of Zurich at the time. Zurich's over farmers, and they're huge, right? And he told me they weren't going to cover anything on that. So I immediately panicked because, we can start building, and this was all before there was a vaccination. if we start building, I can insulate myself with a corporation, right, where I'm going to be pretty bulletproof on a suit, but you can't. And what they would do is, maybe I shouldn't be bringing this up, but I was just anguishing on this. If something goes wrong, they're going to look and see who has the deep pockets. And the city of Carson has deep pockets, and your pockets are unlimited because you have the power to tax. So you can always get more money, right? And that's who the attorneys will come after. So we're going to do our best to always insulate everybody and to keep a really nice project going. And, that's what we're here to do.
And if I may, you recognize property management is key. I mean, on every one of these projects, whether it be, market rate or low income, the property management is, in my mind, the construction is fine, the architectural is great, design, but really the property management for long-term sustainability is the most critical function. We believe we've selected a high-quality property manager that manages in the region. And she's here to speak if you would like her to, but and she can point out different projects in the area that you could go by and just view. I also wanted to point out this is the current version of the architectural on how it appears. And we're going to be continuing to work on that between now and we have a March deadline with the Nevada Housing Division that we're working off of, and so we're working towards getting the full architectural completed. So the architectural is one part of it, the construction is the other part, but the property management, as you identified, is key. So we're on top of it. I agree completely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In regards to the restricted units, how much you charge for the rent and all that, who will be monitoring to see that you stay in compliance with that?
Well, there's multiple agencies that will be monitoring. I mean, you receive your Nevada Housing Division monitor. You'll be monitored by HUD. You'll be monitored. We'll have a project audit every year that will be done. So there's usually multiple audits that are completed on an annual basis. Syndicators do. They take the investors, the syndicators. They all they get monthly reports. And so, it's reviewed by a lot of people. So if you would like to be among those, I don't think it's any issue to continue. We can, it's just sending the forms, and so you can see where things are and how it's progressing.
And to let you know, Supervisor White, the HUD audits us constantly.
Yeah.
So we can't rent to a millionaire and he's living there for $400. That's never going to happen.
Yeah.
So we have to qualify these people by their earnings and everything. And HUD is on us. I mean, that's where a lot of our expenses go, is to provide everybody with above board accounting.
Mm-hmm. So I really don't know who this question is actually for. I'm having a little trouble with the appraisal on this property. That appraisal's from 2019. We know how volatile the world has been over the last 40 months. It's my opinion that even without that volatility, this appraisal is likely fairly stale. So how can we rely on this appraisal that, in my mind, makes some fairly unsubstantiated assumptions to begin with? How do we use this appraisal?
So Maurice, or excuse me, Supervisor White, just in general, I would indicate to you that all of the lending organizations, all of the funders that provide that project, that'll be in their court. So if they want updated appraisals, they'll ask for them. I really don't think there's any issue at the city level concerned on the appraisal. You already have home funds that have been awarded. They've already utilized the document, but if they want final funding, or like you said, some syndicators, some others may come in. I can recall on one, we did one updated one when we were doing Richards Crossing, but I think we just leave that to the powers to be that deal with the money part. That's not in our, the project has to finance and the funders will ask for updated,
Right.
lots of documents, like you
Right.
said.
Madam Mayor, and Supervisor White, the lenders, they're going to want to make sure that the appraisal of 675 or whatever it is, that is at least the value. Okay. If it's more, they don't care, because it's, it's just applied towards the thing. They want to know that it's really not 100,000, so they want to feel comfortable that the 675 is the value
They
today.
didn't go down. Right.
755 actually.
Well, 755,
according to
whatever it is.
Appraisal, but
Yeah.
But we're working on getting very close to locking in a price. Is that appropriate? to
Well,
lock
not
in a
us.
price? It may
The,
not-
the city's not doing anything on a price. We're
We're
providing the
talking about-
property.
You're
Well,
donating
As a
land.
the
mechanism.
value of this property
Right.
as.
Right.
If we can go to page 128. If you go to the last sentence in that paragraph 2.1, the sentence says, "The parties agree that this agreement must be fully executed prior to issuance of any construction permits." So that sentence, as I read it, kind of is not in context to that entire paragraph 2.1. So if you can give me some clarification what you're really talking about there.
Yeah, Dan Stuckey for the record. The point of that is this development agreement's focused on phase one, which those construction permits should not be issued until the execution of this document. I think the confusion, and we can clear this up, is that we're intermixing phase two in there, which the phase one construction permits would occur before the phase two development agreement would happen. So I think that's a good point. We can definitely clarify that further in this paragraph.
Thank you. If we can go to page 152.
Do you mind, Supervisor White, I'm sorry, if you could read the actual page
Page
number
10.
on the development
10.
agreement? Page 10, okay, thank you.
Down there in BI, the records must be retained for 5 years after the completion date. You need to find what that completion date is. Is that the end of construction? Is that the end of the 51 years? Record retention on B, Article 5.
Yeah, so the completion, and we can again review this again, but the completion of the project for phase one or phase two would be the issuance of certificates of occupancy for those specific phases.
On page 183, it is called out that this property is 7.81 acres. But on page 211, the property is called out as 7.95 acres. So what's the reality there?
I think it's the 7.5, but we will fix that
Okay.
discrepancy. Oh, is that what it's referencing? Okay. We wouldn't change that.
Yeah, it's in a third-party report. It's in the Converse Consulting report.
Okay. The development agreement, whatever the acreage is in the development agreement, that's the
Right.
correct acreage.
Okay. On page 210, that company there recommends that a phase two environmental site assessment be made. Has that been done? Phase two has been completed?
Yeah, and this is Michael Snodgrass again. Yes, I believe we had the phase one and phase two were required for the MPR, the master plan review. So I'd have to pull it up, but I'm fairly certain it has been.
And that's where, excuse me, you indicated you went ahead and did the whole property.
Yeah.
So it's ready for both phase 1 and phase 2. I mean, you did it for both, the whole thing.
That's all I have for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Jones?
My question is on page 169, it says parking requirements for multifamily is 2 spaces per unit. However, the city will consider reducing parking requirement. Are we considering reducing parking? It's my experience that you never have enough parking.
Michael Snodgrass with Oikos again. We've been working with Hope and that department to work on the parking. We believe we're there. We have enough space for the number of units that would be required. You know, there's some back and forth again, whether we're going to do, once they drop that QCT line about whether we do 80 units a senior, because the senior has fewer parking requirements. You know, there's other communities that have a lot less parking requirements, and it does look like a lot of parking, because it is a lot of parking. We wish we could get less, but we're willing to accept what the city requires.
And if I may, Mr. Jones, you know, we've done several senior things, and we've got it now where we put in 1 parking space per senior unit. And even at that, if you go down and look at some of our senior units, and once you go down the road 5 to 8 years, you've basically asphalted a lot of acreage out there because they give up their cars. The seniors give up their cars, and you just don't even need that parking.
I think our prime example is Richards Crossing too, because that's one we worked on the parking quite extensively. And like I said, I do visit that once a month just to see, I don't know, it's kind of, I don't know, novel to me, but what did we get right? What did we get wrong? And I'm pleased to actually tell you what they're indicating about cars is accurate. The parking lot is never full at Richards Crossing, never.
And just one more note, we actually are required to put a bus stop.
I was going to say,
Right there on the
they're
street,
using the
so.
bus services, and that to me is probably the most integral, is that they have a service stop, which means they can give up their cars. And that's the other thing we're trying to help with the seniors, is to be able to let them get services in the most convenient fashion. So having a bus stop there will certainly help in the parking arena too. But I do actually understand Supervisor Jones and anything normal, there's nowhere for someone to visit, right? You need a parking place. And
Right,
so
right.
that's a good one too. But did you have more questions, Mr.? No? And then just one other, I'd already submitted a couple little things for a little cleanup, but just so that the rest of the board is aware, we'll work a little bit on some of the reporting requirements in the forms, and we'll do a little bit of cleanup in the approval arenas and what are the annual things, what are the actual dates, because I'd like to align this whole agreement to reduce workload and not have unnecessary expense by creating reports with all different dates, so that, you know, you're reporting to HUD on a January through December and you're reporting to this. I'd like to try and work through it with them to align so that the same report can be used in every, you know, whatever you're giving to home and you're giving to HUD, you're giving to the city. So we'll work a little bit in those reporting areas to clean up when we bring the next development agreement back.
That would be greatly appreciated, by the way.
Yeah, the
Thank
more
you.
I was really looking at, I thought, oh my goodness, these poor guys are going to have a report due every month to a different organization, and it'll be a little bit different formatted, and it'll be a little bit where, so if we can align the activities and that, and I think it actually helps for all of your legal stuff that everybody got the same document. Everybody's reading it the same way. Everybody got the same information. So we'll work a little bit in in those reporting requirements, just so that you know, we'll work on that. Supervisor Giomi?
I just had one more question. Dan, if I'm, if I read things correctly, we're looking at transferring ownership of the entire parcel, all 7.81 acres at one time, even though we don't have a development agreement for the second. So we're not going to transfer ownership.
No, and we'll make sure we'll revise it to make sure it's very clear.
Okay.
But the plan is we would only convey the phase one piece, that westernmost
Okay.
parcel. The rest of it would remain the city's until
Okay.
the phase two agreement comes
Okay,
forward.
perfect. That's what I was, that's really the only concern I had. And it wasn't entirely clear because it
Right.
kind of looked like it could have gone either way in there. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm comfortable with it.
And I've
Thank
got
you.
this timeline. I mean, if there's more questions, but I did want to make sure that I take you guys through what to expect over the next year and a half, because there's a lot of dates in there, and I wanted to make it real clear. And to Supervisor Giomi's point, we're basically going to repeat this again, this process with phase two. So this was issued as late material. After it was issued, I realized I made a mistake on one of the dates. So the highlighted there in red, the first reading of phase one development agreement, I had that going on December 2nd. We're actually going to try to make that happen on November 18th. So what you're going to see, obviously November 4th is today. November 18th, we have to go through the proper steps of conveyance of that phase one piece per Nevada revised statutes. We're looking to utilize 244-287, so we're going through those steps. So you'll see at the next meeting, we're still working on the wording on how that would be proposed, but essentially an application for acceptance of that conveyance. As I mentioned, you'll see the phase one development agreement, the first reading of that at that November 18th meeting. We will then do all the noticings and everything associated with both of those items, come back. The plan is at the December 16th meeting to do second reading of phase one agreement and the next step on that conveyance of that phase one piece. As you know, the exclusivity agreement expires on December 31st, so the hope is to have phase one executed, or phase one development executed before then. I'll let the development team make the recommendation, but there might be a recommendation from them to either have a new exclusivity agreement for that phase two piece. So that may come forward as well, but I'll leave that up to them on how that's gonna work there. Then you will start to see these are the milestones highlighted in that development agreement. You're looking at the completion of the parcel map. So a couple items need to happen for that conveyance piece. We have to do the proper steps on 244-287. We have to do a parcel map, which would break the current property into three pieces: phase one piece, phase two piece, and if you remember that easternmost piece, the city will retain. So that parcel map needs to be completed, and then the development agreement for phase one needs to be executed. So those three things need to happen before that phase one piece could be conveyed. Just wanted to highlight that there. The plan, as of now, development agreement is for start of construction on phase one in April of next year. We're looking hopefully before this, but I just put this date up here. December 2022 is when you'd see the execution of that phase two development agreement. I think Michael thinks that'll happen sooner, but that's the plan there. And then you would see, as Michael mentioned, it'll seem essentially like one project because as phase two is basically being completed in January, as phase one's being completed, phase two will be starting. So you'll see that. And then hopefully all the certificate of occupancies will be issued November 2024 timeframe for those 160 units.
That's great. Thank you. So I don't see any further questions. You have a comment, Ms. Lopez?
Yes, for the record, Hillary Lopez. So I was just going to also add that we will need to extend or renew the exclusivity agreement to show site control for phase two as we move forward with requesting tax exempt bond and other financing from the state of Nevada Housing Division. And we will also be back ahead of then receiving bond financing from the Nevada Housing Division for an endorsement from this board of that application.
Perfect. Okay, seeing no further questions, we really look forward to working with you and bringing a very viable project to fruition for our residents of Carson City. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor. And, Mayor, I'd like to say that Dan Stuckey and his team have been wonderful to work with. I mean,
Thank
yeah,
you. We appreciate
yeah,
that.
I mean, your team has been great on your side, and they're very patient with us, and they work real hard to make you guys look good.
It's
So we
a
appreciate
tough
it.
project to get all that financing and timelines and, like you said, watching the market every day to say, is it a go? Is it a go? Is the project dead now? Because like you said, pricing. So I know how many moving parts there are, and I just want to thank all the teams. Good job. We look forward to this. Is the board okay to move on, or do you want to recess? Everybody's good to keep going. All right. With that, then we're going to recess as the Board of Supervisors, and I'm going to call the meeting to order as the Redevelopment Authority. Ms. Warren, may I have a roll call, please?
Member Giomi?
Here.
Member White?
Here.
Member Jones? Member Shooty?
Here.
Chair Bagwell?
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on to agenda item number 16, which is public comment for the Redevelopment Authority. Is there any member on the line?
There are no callers on the line at this time.
I had no public comment that was listed during on the noticing, but just as a last call here, any public comment? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to approval of the minutes for October 21, 2021. See if I can get that out. Supervisor Giomi?
I move to approve the Carson City Redevelopment Authority meeting minutes, October 21, 2021, as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. We're going to move on to agenda item 18A, which is discussion and possible action concerning the recommendations for the expenditure of $25,000 from the redevelopment revolving fund. Mr. Giomi, you have a disclosure, please?
I do. I have a disclosure that applies to agenda item 18A on the Redevelopment Authority agenda and item 22A on the Board of Supervisors agenda. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment, I serve as a volunteer board member for Nevada Rural RSVP, a nonprofit organization. In this role, I have a fiduciary duty to RSVP. RSVP submitted an application for the Redevelopment Authority grant funding. However, without my involvement, RSVP's application was disqualified because the event for which it sought grant funds occurs in fiscal year 2023 instead of fiscal year 2022. Because RSVP's application was disqualified, my vote in this matter will not affect RSVP in any way, because the judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be materially affected by my relationship with RSVP. I will be voting on this matter.
Okay, so this is our standard item that we do once a year. Does any member of the board actually have any questions or want to talk about any of the applications, or are we good? I don't see any. Supervisor Shooty?
Actually, reading through all the applications, it's incredible what takes place in Carson City. Wow. So just a shout out to our the nonprofits and the good works that take place on behalf of this community, arts, culture, all of that. So that's all.
Okay, seeing no further questions, I would be happy to accept a motion. Supervisor Shooty?
I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the expenditures as recommended by the Cultural Commission.
I have a motion and a second for approval as submitted. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. We're going to move on to the final public comment for the Redevelopment Authority. Do I have anyone on the line?
There are no callers on the line at this time.
Do I have anyone in the audience? Seeing none. Thank you so very much. That closes the public comment. So we're going to now adjourn as the Redevelopment Authority. Thank you, and reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. Let the record reflect, we're moving on to agenda item number 22A. The disclosure from Mr. Giomi will be also reflected on 22A. This is an action item that is the same as 18A prior. This requires, however, now a 2/3 vote. Is there any further questions on this item? It's pretty, we just did it, so I'll accept a motion. Supervisor Jones, you want to make the motion?
I move to approve resolution number 2021R-35.
I second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Let the record reflect the 2/3 motion was achieved. I'm now going to move on to agenda item number 22B. This is for discussion and possible action on our Indigent Defense Services Plan. Mr. Reese? Or Ms. Paulson, you want to start it, or?
Yes, I'll go ahead
Okay,
and
Ms. Paulson,
start
thank
it.
you.
Hopefully I don't say anything wrong. Todd will correct me. So this item is to approve Carson City's Indigent Defense Services Plan.
Oh, excuse me. I'm so, not on that one.
22B, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, I was going to say, thank you. Sorry about that, Nancy. On the wrong item. Go ahead.
When the plan was last presented to our board approved the plan and asked staff to work with the Department of Indigent Defense where possible to establish a compliant plan and to provide comment on the regulations to the Indigent Defense Board. City staff submitted comments and suggested edits to the regulations, and Mr. Reese also provided public comment during the meeting, and so did Ms. Cortez. However, the board adopted the regulations largely as proposed by the Department of Indigent Defense. In the intervening time since that October 6th Board of Indigent Defense meeting, staff has met with DIDS regarding the plan and has made revisions to it. The significant changes from the previous plan that was approved by the Board of Supervisors include the plan was revised to only cover the appointment of counsel for indigent defense services as that term is defined in NRS. Secondly, provide that a conflict counsel assistant will assign conflict counsel and private attorneys as necessary to represent an eligible indigent defense person if the state public defender cannot be appointed. And then finally, eliminating the reference of the ability of a senior judge or a judge pro tem to review requests for compensation and expenses. These functions will, per the plan, be performed by the Indigent Defense Coordinator that will be an independent contractor that DIDS will qualify as a designee of DIDS. And finally, we received word that yesterday that our proposed plan before you today was reviewed by DIDS, the department, and was determined that the plan meets the standards. So the next step in the process would be approval by our board and then approval by the Board of Indigent Defense.
Please let the record reflect that late material was received, so the plan that we are discussing for approval today is based on the late material received, just for the record. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Reese or Ms. Paulson?
Madam Mayor, if I may.
May.
Just a few comments, and I'm going to take off one hat and put on a different hat, taking off the board council hat for a second and putting on the hat so that I can present this to you. The major reasons for the edits were that DIDS or the Board of Indigent Defense and DIDS is asking that the judiciary not be involved with this plan. There are a lot of valid reasons for that, none of which were really applicable to Carson City. But because they're applying it statewide, we're also required not to have the judiciary involved. The other major reason for the edits to the plan are the differences of opinion with DIDS on what exactly the law is. There were many details that were put into the plan that, like any good attorney probably, I believe should be in there because it's planning for contingencies and it's saying, you know, how do we process this? How do we deal with this? What's the plan? But we just weren't able to agree with DIDS on a lot of those details. So the details were simply taken out so that we could, you know, establish a plan. And on the last major reason for some of the changes, especially for the change of limiting the plan to the indigent defense services provided by DIDS as opposed to the larger, you know, indigent defense requirements that the counties and the courts are required to appoint counsel for was because of the state internal finance committee. The state is required, or the state has agreed or was required, as the case may be, to pay for certain indigent defense. The state doesn't want to pay for indigent defense beyond what they're required to do. And so this plan was limited to specifically what's required by the state statutes.
Thank you. So just in general, one of the things of concern is, one, we certainly want to provide the legal indigent services. Those need to occur. Everyone deserves representation. Like you said, Carson City really was never a part of any of the lawsuits that occurred. But we are now subject to the solution that was crafted. What I want to make sure is this plan going to cost Carson City taxpayer more money? Or, you know, where's my, do I have a fixed thing that says, okay, Carson City, your services are $1 million on you, and after that, it goes to a different level? I guess that's my area of concern, that Carson City's been doing everything right. Our judiciary has done the right job. We have protected the rights of the indigent in our community. And so what do you see as the fiscal impact of the change?
Sure.
That's really what I'm after.
And for numbers, I'm going to have to refer that over to the city manager. However, generally, I can identify the areas where the city would be expending more money. The DIDS regulations require Indigent Defense Counsel to report, do caseload reporting and time reporting to DIDS. That's an extra expense for them. And a few months ago, or a few board meetings ago, you saw an increase in the amount of the contract with the Conflict Counsel. And that increase was directly attributable to the increased amount of time that the Conflict Counsel is now spending reporting their numbers to DIDS. Earlier in this agenda, on the consent calendar, you saw an additional increase to the Conflict Counsel contract for an assistant for the Conflict Counsel to do what we're calling the selection and assignment of counsel. Essentially, when the courts, after the state PD level, when the courts are assigning or requesting Conflict Counsel or a private attorney, if Conflict Counsel are conflicted out, their Conflict Counsel will have an assistant who will be doing the assignment of cases to the various counsel. And that is a increased expense to the city. Before, prior to this plan, that was being handled by the court clerks, which are a part of the judiciary. That was one agreement that we weren't, or disagreement with DIDS that we weren't necessarily able to resolve. However, it seemed prudent to comply with what they were requesting. The other area of additional increased expense is for approval of expenses and compensation specifically for private attorneys on the compensation side, but also for the state PD and for Conflict Counsel on the expenses. And that was previously being done by the trial courts themselves. However, this was something that was identified even by the Nevada Supreme Court as having an appearance of impropriety by having the court approve the defense expenses. And so that's through the DIDS regulations, that's taken out of the judiciary entirely. And so the plan has an independent contractor being hired to perform that function. We have been in touch with various attorneys who might be able to perform that function, and depending on the cost of the contract, that either may come back before the board or may be taken care of by the city manager. But we don't anticipate that cost to be to be exorbitant.
So are we looking overall, Ms. Paulson, of a $50,000 change because of implementing the new plan?
That's correct. There also may be additional costs if the attorneys are allowed to do we decide to do that in the plan, the 2,500?
The threshold amount that they
Or
can do for expenses before
automatic
they have to.
reimbursement.
Threshold amount for automatic expenses was removed from the plan. And that was something that in the back and forth with DIDS was actually suggested that be taken out by DIDS. And so we did that. And so instead of kind of having a two-tier expense plan, it's just a one-tier expense plan with expenses coming through the independent contractor.
So I'd just like to recommend, and maybe I'll get to the other questions here too that I can see. We track this and submit, because one of the things that, again, for Carson City to have been doing everything right, you had counties that were not. Now their new services are all being paid for because that was part of the remediation and the correction, right? So now they get paid to be able to provide the services that is requested under this, and Carson City does not. And so I just want to ask that we gather up our expenses and then submit and make them tell us no. But I think in fairness that Carson City should submit its claim for reimbursement if they're going to help the other 15 counties that, anyway, just please gather up our billings and help submit those. But
And Madam Mayor, if I may, the DIDS regulations do provide for that. The regulations does ask that the city establish a baseline from, I think it's 2018 and 2019, and that any increased costs based on the plan that's put in place be submitted to DIDS, and DIDS has actually asked for those anticipated costs. And then they will ask the state or DIDS will ask the state for reimbursement for the city for those costs.
thank you. Supervisor Jones, you have a question?
Yeah. This question is probably for Todd. If we had a public defender, would we be involved in the same situation?
That's a great question, Supervisor Jones, and the answer is both yes and no. If we had a public defender, there would be certain conflicts and certain disagreements with DIDS that may be resolved, and so the plan may be simpler that way. But the answer is no from the standpoint that if we have a public defender, then a Carson City public defender instead of using the state public defender, that we would still need to have a plan. The mechanics of the plan may be a little bit easier because of having a public defender as a part of the city, as a part of the county.
So why haven't we considered a public defender?
At the moment, I would say that your comment is accurate, that Carson City has not considered the public defender. The reason for that is because the plan was required to be submitted as of, I think it was as of the beginning of September, and we've had extensions of time until today to get to work with DIDS and get the plan done. I can tell you that internal discussions of should we have a public defender, have been discussed. Whether we can switch from the state PD to a county PD is governed by statute, and there are certain time frames during which we have to make that request that coincide with the state biennium budget. And so those deadlines are coming up, and will start to occur in the next in 2022, and I would anticipate that we will have discussions before those deadlines come up about what would be best for Carson City.
I think it's worthy of consideration. I truly do.
Just for the record, Supervisor Jones and Mr. Reese, probably, it was before you were here, but we actually did, I'm telling on my age now, coming back here, but we did an internal audit. We actually had a review of whether or not to do a public defender. So we certainly could pull that document up, and it was really a close call then when we looked at all the dynamics of the funding sources and under which scenarios and how many conflict count. So it was a really close call from the audit as to whether or not it was in our best interest. So certainly we could pull all of that information back up and maybe just update it to the current answers.
That was before DIDS, right?
Yes, well, that's what I said. So we
And a lot of things
actually have
today.
already done an exercise because even before DIDS, we were considering, were we paying too much with conflict counsels? Because every time we went to the public defender that we pay a fixed fee for, and then you turn around and they're conflicted out and we're paying for all the conflict counsels. That's kind of where you're like, well, we're paying, but again, it's a system. So certainly we could even look to pull that audit out and then just update it to reflect the current scenario to still see where it's not as easy as just thinking we're going to create our own public defender.
No,
It doesn't come without workload and issues.
I understand that, but I'm led to believe we were doing everything right, and we're getting punished for it now. I think it's worthy of reconsideration.
Mm-hmm. Well, and maybe punish isn't even the right word when I look at to say intervening courts, the Supreme Court and others have made new rulings, mainly the one indicating that the court system should have no part in the review of only that certifying he needs a lawyer, not who his lawyer is going to be, not how much money he can get to do his service. So I think that's a huge change too, and I don't know that that's really DIDS related as much as just the court even indicating that you shouldn't be doing that in indigent services. So I think you have a couple of intervening activities, but it's certainly worth a look to see if there's a more cost-effective methodology for the taxpayers. But we do only have like about a 6-month window, right? Notify them before the budget.
I believe so, yes. It's less than a year, certainly. I don't know the precise date off the top of my head.
Okay. Supervisor Giomi, you've questioned?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I think quite a few things have changed, as you pointed out, Mayor, from the time that internal audit looked at this and now. I mean, because there is DIDS, there is the administrative office of the courts issuing rulings that are different, and I'm not just sure pulling that audit out and dusting it off and changing numbers is going to get us an accurate picture. I would really like to emphasize that I think it's critical that any expenses above our 18-19 average get immediately sent to DIDS for processing. And if that process gets denied by IFC, because they're not even, this is the bizarre thing to me, DIDS is not even funded in their budget without going to IFC to do reimbursements to counties. So that's, so it'll be very interesting to see the first one of these, whether it's ours or one of the other rural counties that takes it to DIDS and to IFC, what happens at IFC? Because I think the discussion from NACO, who supported this with the understanding that the state would pick up the costs above indigent care, because it is clearly a responsibility of the state to pay for indigent care. And so that's the reason NACO supported this DIDS plan. I think DIDS got a little excited and probably went a little bit farther than NACO thought they were going to go. But in the end of the day, it should not cost our taxpayers more money or our community more money. And so I think it's critical that we submit even those changes that we already have from the increased costs from our conflict counsel to them. And And if it doesn't clear IFC, then, we go back to the legislature and say, look, you didn't do what you promised you were going to do. So I think,
Yep.
I think
No,
we're
I agree.
obligated to go down that path.
I agree. Supervisor White?
Do we have the ability to perhaps call upon the governor and ask him to rein in this rogue operation? Tell him to get back within what the legislation said they were going to do? As Supervisor Giomi has pointed out, this is not going where it was promised to go. Secondarily, as we move forward, when we get into this plan, do we have an opportunity to modify the plan to make it work better for us? I mean, we're not locked in forever on whatever plan we submit, right?
To that question, you're correct. We are not locked in. We can change the plan.
Amendment.
We can submit a change plan to the Board of Indigent Defense. And the way it's been operating, they would then approve it. Of course, if they didn't approve it, then the mechanism there is for them to put us on a corrective action plan, and the corrective action plan would be worked out between DIDS and the city. If there was a disagreement between DIDS and the city, then the board again would approve that, or act as a arbitrator or mediator and say which way it should go. After that, of course, if there's still disagreements, there's recourse to the courts through petitions for judicial review. Of course, that at some level, that's the board's call. That's not my call to make for you, but I can certainly provide the procedure for you and tell you what's next.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any further questions, so with that, I'll accept a motion. Supervisor Giomi?
I move to approve the Indigent Defense Services Plan as presented in late material provided to the board.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the Indigent Defense Services Plan as submitted in late material. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried. Thank you. All right, well, we are now at the break time. Just as a reminder to all the members here, we will reconvene at 12:30 p.m. sharp, where we will do the final portions of our agenda for the interviews this afternoon for the candidates for Senate District 16. So we will stand in recess till 12:30. Thank you. Good job.